Welcome to Life by Design, episode 376. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Chrysler Jug, and his lovely wife, Dr. Rochelle Jug, in the background. Welcome to the show, guys.
On the road.
This reminds me of the old On Purpose on the Road. Do you remember those?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it seems like I never hear what the hell they were talking about.
Yes. I guess, for our regular Life by Design listeners, they may not know what that is. It was a corrective chiropractic podcast back prior to podcast. CDs. It was actually a CDs, and before that it was tape series that we used to listen to. And, they would do the On the Road. And so you're going to hear Crayshow and Rochelle here today and maybe a couple more episodes in the next couple of weeks as we record a couple today. And we're on the road. So, I don't think we need to apologize for the audio. It's still pretty good. But if you wonder what's going on, that's what's happening. We're on the road today. So we are creators of Life by Design with 25. Actually, we stopped saying that, didn't we? With many locations worldwide. Each week in the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today, we're talking about bullying and anti-bullying and wearing the pink shirt. And so we're going to start off by talking a bit about just the origin story, Crayshow. So why don't you hit it and let us know how this pink shirt day came to be?
Yeah, so apparently when I was doing my quotation researches, that's how my dad says it, researches with an S. So it happened out east. I think it was in either New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. There was a child in the 9th grade getting bullied by older students because he was wearing a pink shirt. So as you can imagine, sexuality, like this even matters at all. It's ridiculous to even think, but sexuality was questioned. Mm-hmm. And this was witnessed by some older students who decided that the way they were going to combat this was they were going to get a bunch of students and money together and go out and buy as many possible pink shirts as they possibly could. So the next day, everybody at school, except for the two bullies, showed up with a pink shirt.
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story. Now, the sad part about this is I think it's good that we're raising awareness for these things. This is how conversations like this start to happen. Mm-hmm. But the end one or the plus one to this is figuring out what conversations are necessary to actually put this problem or at least start moving towards a solution to this problem.
Yeah, I think this encapsulates a lot of these awareness style campaigns where it's bringing attention to a specific problem. We talk a lot about it in healthcare with different disease conditions. There's more than enough organizations that are attempting to bring awareness to, lots of different situations. And I think that's awesome. And I think it's great. But as you noted, the point of awareness is to become aware and to really spark conversation. And so if we're talking specifically about bullying, I think that the question is, and I think this is where, number one, it starts with, are we having conversations about it? And then I think the other obvious first question, which I don't know that it really gets answered, is, what is bullying, Crayshow?
Yeah, so bullying is the use of either verbal or physical force to coerce somebody against their will to do something, or to just make them feel bad for the decisions that they're making.
Right. Now, do you think that when we're educating people on bullying, let's say in the school system, I didn't do the research. Is there a definition that's used? Is that a standard definition? Is that your definition? Is that what's being taught? Or, what is the conversation that's going on in most schools about this?
Well, I think this is the issue. I think this is a widespread problem. I think it's easy to get behind bullying. When most people think about bullying, what they think about is exactly the description in the story. There's kids and they're picking on another kid. But we see various forms of bullying throughout our culture. Right. And like we were talking about in the pre-show, like if you're on social media yelling at somebody because you disagree with their opinion, you're bullying them into trying to agree with you.
Right.
Right? Parents who make their kids do something to punish them, in a way, that's a form of bullying at times. And I think this is kind of the plus one of the conversation, that we're raising awareness for this, but let's come up with other examples that we're seeing in our culture so we can get an understanding that this is more than just a child, trying to get another child to do something. Like it's much bigger. It's a much bigger problem.
Well, and I think about, and this is by no means a justification, but just in terms of giving some context, I think back to when I was a child, and either how I was treated by other students or how I treated other students. There's no doubt that bullying was prevalent. It just wasn't something that was talked about and defined. And like a lot of things, I wonder, without a definition, some things that maybe even to go to the other direction, maybe there's some things that aren't really classified as bullying. They get also lumped in with bullying. And then that becomes its own problem. So this is always the same thing. When we come back to anything, we usually start with a definition. And I think a lot of problems that happen, especially in anything that requires more than one person to agree on or talk about, having a definition is a great starting point. I don't know that you're going to come up with a black and white definition here of what is and what isn't, but I think that's a part of the issue is we don't really know what is and what isn't. You're getting some false positives and you're getting some false negatives, and it's sparking all of this debate. And then, as you said, people are going home and, they're telling their kids that bullying is bad, but then they're bullying other people on social media, or they're bullying their own children, their work, work personnel. And so, it's something that goes beyond just the playground.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think that's where the conversation needs to start, right? And of course, the solution to this, because again, when you mentioned your experience, when you go back, I've never met a human being who A, has not been bullied at one time in their life, or B, has not, maybe to a lesser degree in some cases, because some people are very kind, but been a bully, right? So this is something that's kind of central and pivotal to the human experience. And I mean, generally, we can talk about some of the specifics, but when you're looking for a solution to something so widespread, the solution is always to create more resilience within yourself.
Right. Right.
This is one of those problems that, unfortunately, because we're dealing with human nature hasn't changed since humans were around. I don't foresee human nature changing anytime in the future. So the answer, is to change yourself in response to human nature.
Well, I think, and some of the detractors from the bullying argument will say, kids or people are more sensitive than ever before. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case. I think we're just, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, if we're being sensitive to how people are feeling or sensitive to how people are being treated. So maybe the standard and that line in the sand for what classifies as bullying is much more easily approached compared to, say, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. But still, it leads to the same solution, which is, building up yourself. And it's, the common theme that we talk about with our kids is that, yes, I mean, I don't want my kids to be put in harm's way. I don't want them to be, quote unquote bullied, but I do want them to learn how to stand up for themselves. And I do want them to learn how to be resilient, to overcome challenges. And so, what's the solution, or what's the conversation anyway? Each of us are parents and we'll maybe have slightly different opinions here, but, what's the solution when a child is, being bullied? And I guess it depends. Does it depend on, is there a degree? So if it, reaches a certain degree, then you act in this way versus a lesser degree. Is it, if it's physical, you do one thing versus emotional, you do another?
Well, so, I mean, it's a complicated conversation, right? Because it involves really two different, philosophical constructs. There's morality and there's politics, right? So you need to be clear based on your value system, what's right and what makes a person good, and what actions they should take based on what's the standard of morality in your life. But there's also the political, which is you're impacting other people, right? Politics by definition is how we should treat other people. Right. So it's a complicated conversation in that you have to answer both of those questions kind of at the same time, right? Because I mean, one of the things that's central, for example, and we see this all the time, and we see it as parents, right? Is it's, well, hands off, hands off is kind of like a moral rule. It's wrong to hit other people. But yet, if I were to bring most parents onto the show and they would say, well, what if somebody was hitting your kid? Would it be okay for your child to hit them back? And they say, yeah, I would expect them to hit them back. But that's a lot of pressure to put on a child. Right now, from one side you're saying, well, it's wrong to hit other people, but in this context, it's okay to hit other people. You're creating an almost an impossible scenario for the child to know how to act, which is why this is a complicated matter, which requires conversation and discussion, which is exactly why we're recording the podcast.
Right. Yeah, that's so. Then I guess the final thought is, and maybe people are probably asking this, what is the correct use of force? Is there a time to use force? Is there, I was joking around the pre-show when Dana and I talk about this. If the kids, Scotty will come home and say, "Oh, so and so, pushed me," or the same stuff you would typically hear, I'm sure, in your house. And of course, it's like, well, why don't you push her back or punch her? And I don't know that she really was like meaning it right off the hop there, but she's a fiery Italian, so that comes that's just part of the nature in that sense. But
poor Dana, man, I hope she doesn't hear half these podcasts, Jamie.
Oh, she hears all the podcasts. We're just nothing but good things about Dana. Actually, most people would see that as a compliment. So yeah, she stands up for what she believes in, and that's something that she's always done. So that's just
I mean, I can answer that question. I can answer that question based on my value system. So for us, the initiation of force is wrong, right? It's wrong to, for no reason, hit somebody or to use, nasty words against somebody. But, once that's used against you, it's okay to retaliate to protect yourself.
Right.
Right. That's it. Sense. That's cut and dry. Like we don't practice pacifism. If somebody, the only time that I've ever raised a hand to my children, in quotation marks, is to pull one of them away from the other one, like when they're in it.
Right.
Right. I don't hit my kids. I don't think hitting people is right. I don't think using force against other people is right. I'm kind with my language, unless I'm threatened and I have to protect myself. Then it's okay. Right. Then somebody's violated my rights to independence, and it's good to I have to protect myself.
Right. Well, I think that's a tough.
It is tough.
It's a tough question for people.
Tough.
For sure.
It should be tough. That's the point. That's why we recorded this podcast. This is hopefully the point that came across was this is a much deeper issue than just, we're doing this thing, wear your shirt, which is great. That's done its job. We have awareness. Now, what do we do when the conversation turns to how do we fix this problem?
Right. Well, there you go. I guess that makes sense, right? It was kind of the whole point of this podcast, and really as it pertains to each condition or situation where awareness is the goal with a certain campaign is that awareness, and is that campaign wearing the shirt, putting on the pink ribbon, going for the run, the walk, outside of, say, raising funds, which also should go with creating more conversation, but raising awareness, let's hope it creates more conversations about these things and people are actually willing to have those, so we can clarify, we can create definitions, we can create standards and some guidelines, and give especially the young people who, they're still formulating an objective mind and a rational mind where, decision making is definitely much more emotional at a younger age. And, give them a bit of a framework and some guardrails to follow.
I hope so. I hope people get more rational, but I don't know sometimes.
It's not going to stop us from doing the podcast, though, Cray Show.
This is true.
Guys, thank you for listening to Life by Design and joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.